Hi, I'm Louise, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite first watches from 2024 that weren't released in 2024. So, this is basically an excuse for me to talk about the movies I watched in 2024 that I loved that don't necessarily fit in my 2024 ranking. And I just was so excited about watching these for the first time that I wanted to talk about them. So, that's what this list is for. Last year was an interesting mix for me. It was a lot of Ridley Scott movies, obviously, and I started watching horror movies really for the first time. I mean, I've seen a few, but I was really selective about what I would watch. And last year, I actually went to go see new releases in the theaters without Googling the plots beforehand, which is a big deal for me. And that also included some old releases I had never seen at that point. So I was feeling a bit braver in 2024, and I'll talk about the 2024 releases in my next video, but for now, there are definitely some big blind spots I've had that I finally watched this year. I got to watch some more queer cinema that I really enjoyed and would highly recommend. I'm going to start with Ridley Scott's films that I like the best. I won't spend a ton of time on these because I have a whole other video here about all of them, but I did want to mention that I really loved watching Gladiator for the first time last year. And that's what started my whole Ridley Scott ranking. I can't thank this movie enough, basically, because that was such a fun adventure, and now I'm working on my next one. I feel like Gladiator takes what is great about that genre and just really takes it to the next level, and it just works so well. All of the performances are great, the action scenes are so well directed, as per usual for Ridley Scott. That's just kind of his thing. And so much of that movie, especially the end, is just seared into my brain, especially after having edited some of that footage, into my ranking. I think about it a lot, which I can't say for a lot of movies. It'll be turning 25 this year, which is kind of incredible. It'd be cool if they did like a re-release or something, but we'll see. The other one that I watched for the first time for the video that I really, really loved was Thelma and Louise. And I'm Louise, so of course I'm going to like it at least a little bit, but it just feels so relevant, especially now. Which is unfortunate because at the time they were like, yeah, we're making groundbreaking cinema, which it is. It is that, but there's a lot that still feels very relevant today. And Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon are just fantastic. I'm so glad that the cast and crew worked out how it did. It just feels like everyone was perfectly put in place. And originally it was going to be very different, directed by different people, acted by different people. But I think what we got was excellent. And I really can't think of a lot of other movies like that feature women. I know Drive Away Dolls also came out last year. It wasn't my favorite. There's not a lot of other movies like that, even now, 30 plus years later. But I'm glad that I'm in a timeline where it exists and it exists how it does. I'm going to move more into my kind of more queer cinema or LGBTQ cinema. I put Some Like It Hot here because even though it's not explicitly LGBTQ, it feels that way a little bit. There's cross-dressing, and it's mostly meant as like a joke, but it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't in a honestly relatively tasteful way, especially for the 50s. Anyway, I haven't seen a lot of Marilyn Monroe, and it was fun to see her in this role, and just it seems like she's just having the time of her life and just doing all this fun stuff. And I love the main actors. They were really fun. And just all the shenanigans they got up to. I didn't realize the mob was going to be such a big part of that movie. I really was like, I don't know, not expecting it. I had seen the end in like a film class before, so I knew that was coming. And it's iconic, obviously, and iconic for a good reason. But the rest of it was also hilarious. And I love that the ending was just so fun. And it puts it off as such a fun, light note. And apparently, I found this out while I was doing, writing up for this video. It wasn't approved by the Hays Code at the time, which in the 50s was a bigger deal. But, as the 50s went on, came out in 1959. It became less and less important to be approved by the Hays Code. So it sounds like that didn't affect the movie's popularity at the time, which thank goodness, it's really great. Also, it's getting a 4K re-release as part of the Criterion Collection, and I definitely think I'm going to have to add that to my collection once it goes on sale. I really liked Some Like It Hot. It was super fun. Another great film that I enjoyed watching last year was To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. That name is so hard for me. It's just so long. I knew I was in for a treat when RuPaul shows up in a sparkly version of the Confederate flag, and her drag name was Rachel Tensions. I was like, oh, that's what this movie is going to be. Okay. I've always wanted to see this movie because before I watched it, the only other movie I had seen Wesley Snipes in at the time was Blade, and this just seemed so different for him. And I was really curious how drag culture was going to be represented, because my version of drag culture has come from Drag Race, which even just within the show itself has really changed as drag has become more mainstream. I mean, it's not exactly mainstream, but it's definitely more, I don't know, more people know different drag queens than they ever have. And anyway, so I was just curious to see how that was represented. And, this movie came out now 30 years ago. It turns 30 this year. And as an American who is also queer, I happen to love queer movies that have a happy ending. And I feel like we don't get enough of that, because so much of queer cinema is like, this is how hard it is to be a queer person. I want you to see how hard it is. But there's only so much of that my heart can handle. And so it was really fun to watch something that has, for the most part, a pretty upbeat tone and also ends happy, which doesn't seem like such a big deal. But just when you see so much like anguish in queer cinema, you just, at least for me, I just kind of get tired of it, and I just want to see something fun. And this is very much that. It's very upbeat. It's very kind. It's not trying to, I don't know, it's not doing anything like revolutionary that would seem revolutionary now. But I do think for what it was 30 years ago, it is pretty incredible that it exists as it is. Like, having Patrick Swayze play a drag queen is really interesting. All the principal cast were pretty incredible, but especially John. He was just, oh my gosh. Every time I see him in something now, like he's in a movie trailer for like this movie where this young woman becomes friends with him through Facebook. She has a bad relationship with her dad or something. Anyway, he was incredible. And I just was like, didn't really realize it was him until like partway through. And I was like, wait, I know him from something. I just loved how sentimental and sweet this was. And I love that kind of thing. And speaking of more sentimental queer cinema, I also watched The Birdcage for the first time. And that was hilarious. I can't believe I hadn't watched it before now, because I love Robin Williams. I love his co-star Nathan Lane. And just seeing Robin play a gay man just like made a lot of sense to me. Like, that didn't feel weird. I don't know. He just has, because some people who are straight who play gay people are very like, it just comes across as weird. But then you have people like Stanley Tucci who will play a gay man, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And the whole movie is just hilarious. I was dying laughing, and everyone is doing such a great job at like playing their parts. Because you have like Gene Hackman, who's playing like this really conservative politician, and which is hilarious. in and of itself, and just seeing him interact with Robin Williams. And anyway, that whole scene at the end where they're all interacting for the first time is just so funny. And then Nathan Lane comes in drag and is just so perfect and like says everything he wants to hear. Anyway, it's so good. I keep just laughing, just picturing different parts, and then, the kind of famous scene where Robin comes in with the giant bowl of soup or whatever they're eating and like falls, and it wasn't supposed to be that way, and you can see everybody trying not to laugh. But Robin Williams just like keeps carrying on the scene, and it's so good. This movie is so funny. I haven't seen enough of Nathan Lane, is what I realized after watching this, because I know him from The Lion King as Timon, and it was fun to see his like physical performance too. I need to watch The Producers. I know he's in that. And so that was really fun to see him do that. And I was dying looking at the poster again. I was writing this script and I was like, in the picture, he's wearing a suit. So when I saw the movie, I was kind of surprised that Nathan Lane is playing like a drag queen. I was just like, why is he wearing a suit? Because he, like, at the end of the movie, he dresses up in drag. So him wearing a suit doesn't even really make sense because I don't even think he wears a suit in the movie. Anyway, that's aside. I also love seeing Hank Azaria in anything. The first movie I ever saw him in was Mystery Men, which is from a similar time. I think he's so funny. In this movie in particular, he just makes me laugh. I don't know. I love also the apartment they live in and the transformation it takes as they go from like a house full of gays and what they think straight people think. That trope is one of my favorites, is gay people trying to figure out what straight people would think is normal. I think that is so funny. As a queer person myself, who has also had to try and think of stuff like that. Not that my house is like overly gay and I've had to hide that, but it's just, I find it humorous. I find that trope humorous. And I do want to say, kind of as an aside, that what the son is asking of them, he's just like kind of a jerk. I can't believe he's like, yeah, okay, Dad, you have to pretend to be straight when I meet this girl. And they make a big deal about this first meeting. And I'm like, doesn't he realize that if they're going to do this now, they're going to have to keep pretending like after they get married? Because they're engaged, I think. And anyway, I just thought that was kind of crazy. Like, what are you talking about? That's such a crazy thing to ask. But other than that, the movie was really good. And it created a lot of funny tension and a lot of funny drama. So it's fine. Another movie I saw last year on a whim. I had access to Netflix for like a week last year. And I just so happened to see Smokey and the Bandit on there for like the week I was there. And I just watched it because I was like, oh, I love the 70s. I love cinema from that time. I love Sally Field. I saw that she was on the poster. I didn't know really anything about it. And so I started it. And I just was having a ball. The car chases are so fun. I love the practicalness of everything. I miss so much like real explosions and real car chases. Like even now, car chases in movies still feel so polished. And this was just like, felt so real. And there's also semi-trucks are part of these car chases and aren't just like obstacles to get around. That was really fun. All the actors were really great. It's also fun to see a movie where the police are like kind of dumb and antagonistic towards the protagonists. I feel like we don't see that very often. The police are often very serious, even if they are the villain. So it was fun to kind of see them as a joke. I also really enjoyed the music, the song, I don't know what to call it other than the Smokey and the Bandit song. And if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. I just had it on repeat that summer because I saw it like right after the 4th of July. And I just was like, this is a perfect summer movie. Like American summer movie. And it's just so fun. I also loved the trucker community a lot and how they were involved in them trying to, get away really quickly, and how they just kind of banded together to help our protagonists. I thought that was really fun. I have no idea if that's how it works in real life or if that's how it is now, almost 50 years later. It was just fun to see them all interact and help Smokey out. I also think Burt Reynolds looks a lot like Pedro Pascal. And so if there's ever like a biopic done or something where somebody needs to play Burt Reynolds from the 70s, Pedro Pascal has got that. He's got it. They look so similar to me. And I really think this is the most beautiful Sally Field has ever been. She just looks incredible. I love that she just pops in the wedding dress and immediately is just like super fun and has great chemistry with Burt Reynolds. And I think they got together either during the movie or after the movie, and so that makes sense why their chemistry was really good. And this is only the second movie I've seen with Paul Williams, and the other one I've seen is Phantom of the Paradise, and so it's funny seeing him in this because Phantom of the Paradise is very different, way more serious. So that was really fun to see him in this, playing this kind of silly tycoon guy. If you're looking for like a road trip film, this is a great one. It's very silly, not serious at all. It's got great music. It's just a blast. I had so much fun. Last November, I did a weekly Noirvember movie with my friends. So every Saturday, we'd get together and watch noir films. And we started off with M, which isn't technically a noir film, but has a lot of the same, a lot of the same visual and storytelling staples, I guess I would say. And holy crap, this was so good. I cannot believe this was Fritz Lang's first sound film. Like, I get that he's really good at what he does, but holy crap. Just watching how the camera moved felt so modern to me. And this was 1931. Sound had kind of become the norm like 2 years earlier. And at that point, what was happening in cinema at the time is a lot of cameras were becoming like more stationary because they were trying to figure out how to use this sound technology, because you're trying to record not just the visual but also the sound of what's going on. You see that in like Singing in the Rain, that scene where they're like, she's got the microphone on her sleeve and she talks like this, and you like can't really hear her very well. And and obviously our microphones have gotten more and more advanced and more complicated, and at the time they didn't have access to all that. But anyway, all this to say, I was really, really impressed with the camera work on its own, but just considering the historical context in which the movie came out in is just incredible to me. And so because of that, at the time, so many filmmakers would move more to the stationary cameras, because in early days of cinema, they were trying to basically just film like operas. And so that was like the setup, is you'd have a play and then you would just film it. And then, it became more, I guess, sophisticated as they discovered like, oh, you can edit two things together and have people associate those two things together and have ideas based on how you edit something. Or, you can move the camera in a certain way to communicate something. And all of this happened during silent filmmaking, and then it kind of stopped post silent film. Once sound was introduced. And a lot of people claim, oh, after sound was introduced, film was never the same, and blah, 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 which I don't really necessarily think is true. But I do think a lot of films from the 30s and onward were a lot less creative in their camera movements. Like at the Oscars, the movie that won Best Picture, the first movie to win Best Picture, Wings, has so much camera movement, and you'll notice in it, if you ever watch it, that like the way the camera is feels a lot like Star Wars. Wonder where that comes from. Because it's a lot of flying and stuff, and Star Wars pulled a lot of the way the air fights were filmed into Star Wars. So, anyway. So the camera's really mobile because the sound doesn't matter. You can make your thing as loud as you want. But with M, to get back to what I'm talking about, the sound is really important because of this dialogue and all this stuff, and you're trying to record what's on set and all that jazz. But the camera still feels like an active part of the filmmaking. It's not just like stationary while we watch a play unfold in front of us. It's an active part of what's going on, in the sense that, like, it doesn't feel like we're just watching a play. And there's not just that going on either. The writing is really smart and really clever, and it just feels like it's asking these big questions, because the film is about a child murderer. Like, it's really serious, but the way it handles it is very, like, you don't see any violence. You don't, it's all that stuff is off screen, but you still feel the tension, and it communicates it in other ways, right? And there's a monologue. I don't want to go too much into it because I want, if you haven't seen it, to watch it. But if you have seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Where I just like the actor and the writer and the way it was directed. My jaw was just on the floor. It was so incredible. And anyway, I cannot recommend it enough. I'm telling you, if you just are willing to read subtitles, it's a German film also. So if you're willing to read subtitles, this is a great one. Or if you speak German, maybe that's not a big thing. But anyway, this movie is just phenomenal. So good. Highly recommend it. This year, I got more into horror films, and one of my favorites that I saw last year was The Silence of the Lambs. I watched it technically for my Ridley Scott ranking because I felt like I shouldn't watch Hannibal without having seen Silence of the Lambs. I feel like that was an important, like, stepping stone, and I've kind of always wanted to watch it, but I've been afraid to because I'm just haven't been a horror person. But this felt more like a thriller to me, I will admit. But it was so good. I just, even from the very beginning, I was like, what we're seeing is so intentional. What the dialogue is doing is so intentional. So much of it felt like it was just so well thought out and well executed. Like, the pacing is incredible. There's never a dull moment. It feels like there's no fat. It's all been trimmed. And I just was, like, on board with what was happening from, like, the first minute of the movie. I was like, okay, got it. I get the tone. I get who our main character is. I don't know what's going to happen, but I buy that this is a world that exists. I, believe Clarice is a character, and I'm in. I'm good. And it was just, I'm not at all surprised for any horror movie to win Best Picture, that it was Silence of the Lambs. I really think more horror movies should win Best Picture, but of all the horror movies, Silence of the Lambs makes sense. Of course, Jodie Foster is incredible, and so is Anthony Hopkins. They do so much to make this movie work, but the filmmakers around them, I don't think they get enough credit, because obviously the performances are really flashy and really important, but the filmmaking happening is also really good too. The dialogue works really well because it's not just like literally what they're saying, but there's like conversations happening with their faces and, just like what they're saying and not saying. It is so good. Amazing. Amazing filmmaking. So many pieces that have to work together well in order to make this movie work, and they all work pretty great. Another horror film that I watched for the first time this year that I loved way more than I thought I would was The Thing. All I knew about this was that there was a lot of creature work, and I'd seen probably every scene with the creature stuff except for the end at some point, whether it was in a film class or just in a video essay or something. So all of that I kind of knew was coming, but I had no idea that this movie was so well shot. I just was so blown away by some of the compositions, the lighting outside, especially with the blue and the black. I just wouldn't think to do that. And it's such a creative way of like giving you the outer world outside of the compound, but also making it like mysterious and scary, but it looks amazing. Obviously, it's not like that's realistic, but it looks really cool. And you have the reds of the lights sometimes, and just it just is shot so well that makes the rest of it work so well. And the script, again, another tight, great script. So much of what's happening is just so intense. And it's not so much about the creature. I mean, the creature's obviously important, you know, or the creatures or whatever. But it's more about like not knowing who to trust, which is way more interesting to me. I don't know why I didn't think that that was going to be part of it. But that was so, so cool. Yeah, the script is just super smart. And I was really thrilled to see Keith David in this. I did not know he was in this movie. So that was really fun. I love him. Every time I see him, it's a pleasant surprise when I don't know who's in it. And Kurt Russell is also really fun in this. I love his hair. And their spoilers, I guess, for the end of the thing, if you haven't seen it yet. Their conversation at the end of the film is just so well acted and so well written, and just a great, great way to end the movie. I also am so baffled. Ennio Morricone, I don't know if that's how you say his name, but he did the score for this, which I was really like surprised by. I don't know. I think of John Carpenter as like the sci-fi and horror guy that also does a lot of his own music. And I like it. I mean, I just watched Escape from New York for the first time a couple weeks ago, and he did the music for that one. Anyway, the music was really good, very spooky, and very much fit the tone of the movie. It definitely holds up, and I think it spooked me the most of the horror movies I watched last year. In a good way, you know, that's kind of what horror movies do, but it was the one I was thinking about the most when I went to bed after watching it. Thank you so much for watching this video if you're here at the end of this. I'm really excited to watch more movies in 2025. And I already have at least one movie, you know what, two now that I'm thinking about it, that will make the same list next year when I get 2026. But anyway, I love movies. I will keep watching old stuff and new stuff. I can't just watch new stuff. That's just, I couldn't do that. There's too much. Like, they could stop making movies now and I would never run out of new great things to watch. There's just so much great cinema out there. So anyway, if you have any suggestions for me, I'm always looking for new stuff to watch. If any of these things you were like, you know what, you would probably like this movie, please tell me. I would love to know it. I love movie suggestions. So thank you so much for watching. Other thing I had seen, Wesley Snipes, and it'll be turning 2025